Hello and welcome tonight to our nightly reading of Harry Potter. As always, we're brought to you by Bertie Bott's Every Flavor Beans with their newest booger flavor. Don't forget to not try one today. As always, alongside, we've got a married couple today, Wolverine and Sally. And as is every night, brought to you by my own presenting sponsor, coffee. Let's jump right back in. I believe we just went to Hagrid's hut, but ran into someone unexpected. The door opened. Hermione said, "About time," and then stopped very suddenly because she had found herself face to face, not with Hagrid, but with Albus Dumbledore. "Good afternoon," he said pleasantly, smiling down at them. "We, wanted to see Hagrid, sir," said Hermione in a rather small voice. "Yes, I gathered," said Dumbledore, his eyes twinkling. "Why don't you come in?" Okay," said Hermione. They all went into the cabin, and Fang launched himself at Harry the moment he entered, barking madly and trying to lick his ears. He fended off Fang and looked around. Hagrid was sitting at the table where there were 2 large mugs of tea. His face was a real mess. It was blotchy, his eyes were swollen, and he had gone to the other extreme where his hair was concerned. Far from trying to make it behave, it now looked like a jumbled mass of tangled wire. "Hey, Hagrid," said Harry. Hagrid looked up. "Lo," he said in a hoarse voice. "More tea, I think," said Dumbledore, closing the door behind Harry, Ron, and Hermione. Dumbledore magicked the tray and the tea onto the table, and everyone sat down. There was a slight pause, and then Dumbledore said, "Did you by any chance hear what Miss Granger was shouting, Hagrid?" Hermione went slightly pink, but Dumbledore smiled at her. "Hermione, Harry, and Ron still seem to want to know you, judging by the way they've once again attempted to break down your door." "Of course we want to know you," Harry said to Hagrid. "You don't think that Skeeter cow—" Sorry, Professor," he said, looking at Dumbledore. "I have gone temporarily deaf and haven't any idea what you said, Harry," said Dumbledore, twiddling his thumbs and staring up at the ceiling. "Right," said Harry sheepishly. "I just meant, Hagrid, how could you think we'd care what that woman wrote about you?" 2 fat tears leaked out of Hagrid's eyes and trickled through his beard. "Living proof of what I've been telling you, Hagrid," said Dumbledore, looking carefully up at the ceiling still. "I've shown you the letter from countless parents who remember you from their own days here, telling me in no uncertain terms that if I sacked you, I would have to answer for it." "Not all of them," said Hagrid hoarsely. "Not all of them want me to stay." "Really, Hagrid, if you're holding out for universal popularity, you're going to be in here for a long time," said Dumbledore. "Not a week has passed since I became headmaster of the school when I have not received at least 1 owl, sometimes more, complaining about the way I run it. What should I do? Barricade myself in my study? Refuse to talk to anyone?" "Well, you're not half giant," said Hagrid croakily. "Hagrid," said Harry, breaking in, "look what I've got for relatives. Look at the Dursleys." "An excellent point," said Professor Dumbledore. "My own brother Aberforth was prosecuted for practicing inappropriate charms on animals. It was all over the papers. But did Aberforth hide? He did not. He held his head high and went about his business as usual. Of course, I'm not sure he can read, so that may not have been bravery, but—" "Come back and teach, Hagrid," said Hermione quietly. "Please come back. We really miss you." Hagrid gulped, and more tears leaked down through his beard. Dumbledore stood up. "As for your resignation, Hagrid, I refuse to accept it, and I expect you back at work on Monday," he said. "You will join me for breakfast at 8:30 in the Great Hall. No excuses. Good day to you all." He left the cabin, pausing only to scratch Fang's ears and shut the door behind him. Hagrid began to sob into his dustbin lid-sized hands. Hermione kept patting his arm, and at last Hagrid looked up, eyes very red, and said, "Great man, Dumbledore, great man." "Yeah, he is," said Ron. "Can I have one of the cakes?" "Oh, sure, help yourself." More tears leaked out, but he wiped them away frantically and said, "Never shown you a picture of my old dad, have I? Here." He got up, went over to his dresser, opened a drawer, and pulled out a picture of a short wizard with Hagrid's crinkled black eyes, beaming as he sat on top of Hagrid's shoulders. Hagrid was a good 7 or 8 feet tall, judging by the apple trees around him, but his face was beardless, young, and round. He looked hardly older than 11. "I was taken just after I got into Hogwarts," Hagrid croaked. "I was dead chuffed. Thought I might not be a wizard, see, because me mom—well, anyway, I was never great, Shake, said Mac, but at least he never saw me expelled, Dad. You know, my dad died after my second year, so that's one thing to be grateful for. Dumbledore is the one who stuck up for me after Dad went, got me the gamekeeper job, knows people can turn out okay, even if their families don't. There's some who'd hold it against you, you know, your family. Some who'd even pretend that they're just big bones rather than stand up and say, listen, I'm not ashamed. Never be ashamed, my old dad used to say. There's some who hold it against you, but they're not worth bothering, right? And he was right. I've been an idiot. I'm not bothering with her no more, I promise you that. Big bones, I'll give her big bones. Harry, Ron, Hermione looked at each other nervously. Hagrid would rather taken 50 blast-ended Scroots for a walk than admit to most people that he had been talking to Madame Maxime. But he'd apparently forgotten that he had said anything odd. You know what, Harry? He said, looking up from the photograph of his father, eyes bright for the first time in a bit. When I first met you, you reminded me a bit, you know. Mom and Dad gone, you're feeling like you wouldn't fit in, not sure you're up to it. And now look at you, Harry, school champion. He looked at Harry for a moment and said very seriously, you know what I'd love, Harry? I'd love for you to win. I really would. Show them all. You don't have to be pureblood to do it. You don't have to be ashamed of who you are. It'd show them Dumbledore's the one who got it right, letting anyone in as long as they can do magic. How you doing with that egg, Harry? Great, said Harry. Really great. Hagrid's miserable face broke into a wide, watery smile. That's my boy. You show him, Harry. You show him. Beat 'em all. Lying to Hagrid wasn't quite like lying to anyone else. Harry went back to the castle later that afternoon with Ron and Hermione, unable to banish the image of the happy expression on Hagrid's whiskery face as he imagined Harry winning the tournament. The incomprehensible egg weighed more heavily than ever on Harry's conscience that evening, and by the time he got into bed, he had made up his mind. It was time to shelve his pride and see if Cedric's hint was worth anything. And now we begin chapter 25, The Egg and the Eye. As Harry had no idea how long a bath he'd need to work out the secret of the golden egg, he decided to do it at night when he'd be able to take as much time as he wanted. Reluctant though he might be to accept favors from Cedric, he also decided that he needed to use the prefect's bathroom. Far fewer people were allowed in there, so it became much less likely he would be disturbed. Harry planned his excursion carefully, because he had been caught out of bed and out of bounds by Filch the caretaker in the middle of the night once before and had no desire to repeat the experience. The invisibility cloak would be essential, and as an added precaution, Harry thought he might take the Marauder's map, which next to the cloak was his most useful aid in rule breakings. The map showed the whole of Hogwarts, including its many shortcuts, secret passageway, but most important of all, revealed the people inside the castle as minuscule labeled dots moving about, so that Harry would be forewarned if anyone came. Thursday night, he sneaked up to bed, put on the cloak, crept downstairs, and then, just as he had done on the night when Hagrid showed him the dragons, waited for the portrait hole to open. This time it was Ron who waited outside to give the fat lady the password. Banana fritters! Good luck, Ron muttered, climbing into the room as invisibly Harry crept past him. It was awkward moving under the cloak tonight, though, because Harry had a heavy egg under one arm and a map in front of his nose with the other. However, the moonlit corridors were empty and silent, and checking the map at strategic intervals, Harry was able to ensure he wouldn't run into anyone he wanted to avoid. When he reached the statue of Boris the Bewildered, a lost-looking wizard with his gloves on the wrong hands, he located the right door, leaned close to it, and whispered the password, Pine Fresh, just like Cedric had told him. The door creaked open. Harry slipped inside, bolted the door behind him, and pulled off the invisibility cloak, looking around. His immediate reaction was that it might be worth becoming a prefect, just to use the bathroom. It was softly lit by a splendid chandelier. Everything was made of white marble, and about 100 golden taps were strewn about the edges of a beautiful rectangular swimming pool sunk into the middle of the floor. There's also a diving board. Long white linen curtains hung at the windows. A large pile of fluffy white pillows sat in a corner, waiting to towel people off. And there was a single golden framed painting on the wall featuring a blonde mermaid who was fast asleep on a rock, her long hair over her face. It fluttered every time she snored. Harry moved forward, looking around, his footsteps echoing off the walls. Magnificent though the bathroom was, and quite keen though he was to try out a few of the taps, now that he was here, he couldn't quite suppress the feeling that Cedric might have been having him on. How on earth was this supposed to help solve the mystery of the egg? Nevertheless, he grabbed one of the fluffy towel pillows, the cloak, the map, and the egg at the side of the swimming pool-sized bath, then knelt down and turned on a few of the taps. He could tell at once that they carried different sorts of bubble bath mixed with water, though it wasn't bubble bath as Harry had ever experienced it. One tap gushed pink and blue bubbles size of footballs. Another poured ice-white foam so thick that Harry thought it might support his weight. Harry amused himself for a while, turning the taps on and off, particularly enjoying the effect of one whose jet bounced off the surface of the water in large arcs. Then, when the deep pool was full of hot water, foam, and bubbles, Harry turned off the taps, pulled off his pajamas, slippers, and dressing gown, and slid into the water. It was so deep his feet just touched the bottom, and he actually did a couple of lengths before swimming back to the side and treading water, staring at the egg. Highly enjoyable though it was to swim in hot, foamy water, with clouds of different colored steam wafting about. No stroke of brilliance came, no burst of understanding. Harry stretched out his arms, lifted the egg in his wet hands, and opened it. As before, a wailing, screeching sound filled the bathroom, echoing and reverberating across all the marble walls. But it sounded even more incomprehensible than ever because of all the echoes. He snapped it shut again, worried that the sound might attract Filch, wondering if that may not have been Cedric's plan to get him kicked out of the tournament. And then, making him jump so badly that he dropped the egg, which bounced across the bathroom floor, someone spoke. "I'd try putting it in the water if I were you." Harry swallowed a considerable amount of bubbles in shock. He looked up, sputtering, and saw the ghost of a glum-looking girl sitting cross-legged on one of the taps. It was Moaning Myrtle, who was usually to be heard sobbing in the S-bend of a toilet 3 floors below. "Myrtle!" Harry said in outrage. I'm not wearing anything." The foam was so dense this didn't actually matter, but he had a nasty feeling Myrtle had been spying on him since he had arrived. "I closed my eyes when you got in," she said, blinking at him through her thick glasses. "You haven't been to see me for ages." "Yeah, well," said Harry, bending his knees slightly just to make absolutely sure Myrtle couldn't see anything but his head. "I'm not supposed to come into your bathroom, am I? It's a girl's bath." "You didn't used to care," said Myrtle miserably. "You used to be in there all the time." This was true, but only because Harry, Ron, and Hermione had found Myrtle's out-of-order toilets a convenient place to brew Polyjuice Potion in secret. "I got told off for going in there," said Harry, which was half true. Myrtle had once caught him coming out. "I thought I'd better not come back after that." "Oh, I see," said Myrtle, picking at a spot in her chin in a morose sort of way. "Well, anyway, I'd try the egg in the water. That's what Cedric Diggory did." "Wait a minute," said Harry. "You've been spying on him too? What do you do, just sneak up here in the evenings?" "Sometimes," said Myrtle rather slyly. "But I've never come out to speak to anyone before." "I'm honored," said Harry darkly. "Keep your eyes shut." He made sure Myrtle had her glasses well covered before hoisting himself out of the bath, wrapping the towel firmly around his waist and retrieving the egg. Once he was back in the water, Myrtle peered through her fingers and said, "Go on, open it under the water." Harry lowered the egg beneath the foamy surface and opened it. And this time it didn't wail. A gurgling song was coming out of it, a song whose words you couldn't really distinguish through the water. "You need to put your head under too," said Myrtle, who now seemed to be thoroughly enjoying bossing around. "Go on." Harry took a great breath and slid under the surface. And now, sitting on the marble bottom of the bubble-filled bath, he heard a chorus of eerie voices singing to him from the open egg in his hands. "Come seek us where our voices sound. We cannot sing above the ground. And while you're searching, ponder this. We've taken what you'll sorely miss. An hour long you have to look to recover what we took, but past an hour the prospect's black. Too late, it's gone, it won't come back." Shocked, Harry let himself float upwards. "Hear it?" said Myrtle. "Yeah, come seek us where our voices sound. And if I need persuading or something, hang on, I need to listen again. He sank back beneath the water. It took 3 more trips before he had it memorized. Then he treaded water for a bit, thinking hard. I've got to go look for people who can't use their voices above the ground, he said slowly. Who could that be? Oh, slow, aren't you? He had never seen moaning Myrtle so cheerful, apart from the day when a dose of Polyjuice potion had given Hermione the characteristics of a cat. He stared around the bathroom, thinking, if voices could only be heard underwater, it made this potentially something that only creatures who lived underwater could do. Myrtle smirked at him. Well, that's what Diggory thought, he said. He lay there talking to himself for ages and ages. Nearly all the bubbles had gone. Underwater, Harry said slowly. Myrtle, what lives in the lake apart from the giant squid? Oh, all sorts, she said. I sometimes go down there. Sometimes don't have any choice if someone flushes my toilet when I'm not expecting it. Trying not to think about Myrtle zooming down a pipe to the lake with the toilet's contents, Harry said, well, does anything in there have a human voice? Hang on. Harry's eyes fell to the picture of the snoozing mermaid on the wall. Myrtle, are there mer people in the lake? Oh, very good, she said, her thick glasses twinkling. Took Diggory much longer than that, and that was with her awake, too. She wiggled her finger with an expression of great dislike, giggling and showing off and flashing her fins to him, she was. That's it, Harry said. The second task is to go find the mer people in the lake and he suddenly realized what he was saying, and the excitement drained from him like someone pulled a plug on the tub. He'd never been a very good swimmer. He'd never had any practice. Dudley had had lessons in his youth, but Aunt Petunia and Uncle Vernon, no doubt hoping that Harry just might drown someday, never gave him any. Myrtle, said Harry slowly, how am I supposed to breathe? At this, Myrtle's eyes filled with sudden tears. Tactless, she said, grabbing for a handkerchief. What's tactless? Said Harry bewildered. Talking about breathing in front of me, she said shrilly. When I haven't, not for ages. She buried her face in the handkerchief and sniffed loudly. Harry remembered how touchy Myrtle had always been about being dead, but none of the other ghosts he knew made any fuss about it at all. Sorry, he said impatiently. I just forgot. Oh, yes, very easy to forget Myrtle's dead, she said, looking out of him with swollen eyes. Nobody missed me even when I was alive. It took them hours and hours to find my body. I know, I was sitting there waiting for them. And then I went to Olive Hornby, and then Harry wasn't listening. He was thinking about the mer people again. We've taken what you'll sorely miss. That sounded ominous, like they were going to steal something of his. But what could they take from the lake? And then, of course, she went to the Ministry of Magic to stop me stalking her, so then I had to come live in the toilet. Good thing, said Harry vaguely. Well, I'm a lot further on than I was. Shut your eyes again, will you? I'm getting out. He retrieved the egg from the bottom of the bath, climbed out, dried himself, and pulled on his pajamas and dressing gown. Will you come visit me in my bathroom again sometime? Myrtle asked mournfully as Harry picked up the invisibility cloak. Maybe I'll try, said Harry, privately thinking the only way he would in fact have to try was if every other toilet in the castle was blocked. See you later, Myrtle. Thanks for your help. Bye-bye, she said gloomily, and Harry put on the invisibility cloak as he saw her zoom back up the tap. Outside the dark corridor, Harry examined the Marauders' map to check that the coast was clear. Yes, Filch and Mrs. Norris were safely in their office. Nothing seemed to be moving except for Peeves, zipping about as he always did. He took a step outside and then saw something odd. Peeves was not the only thing that was moving. A single dot was flitting around a room in the bottom left-hand corner, Snape's office. But the dot wasn't labeled Severus Snape. It was labeled Bartemius Crouch. Harry stared at the dot. Mr. Crouch was supposed to be too ill to go to work or come to the Yule Ball. What was he doing sneaking into Hogwarts at 1 a.m? Harry watched closely as the dot moved about the room, pausing here and there. He hesitated, thinking, and then his curiosity got the better of him. He turned and set off in the opposite direction toward the nearest staircase. He was going to see what Crouch was up to. He walked down the stairs as quietly as possible, though the faces in some of the portraits still turned curiously at the squeak of a floorboard that had no human walking with it. He kept glancing at the map, wondering. It just didn't seem in character for law-abiding, correct Mr. Crouch to be sneaking around someone's office so late at night. And then halfway down the staircase, not thinking about what he was doing, not concentrating on anything except Mr. Crouch's peculiar behavior, Harry's legs suddenly sank through the trick step Neville always forgot to jump. He gave an ungainly wobble, and the golden egg slipped from under his arm. He lurched forward to try and catch it, but too late. The egg bounced down the long staircase with a bang. The invisibility cloak slipped. Harry snatched at it, and the Marauder's map fluttered out of his hand and slid down 6 stairs, or sunk into the step to the knee. He couldn't reach it. The golden egg fell through the tapestry at the bottom of the staircase, burst open, and began wailing loudly in the corridor below. Harry pulled out his wand and struggled to touch the Marauder's map to wipe it blank, but it was too far away to reach. Pulling the cloak back over himself, Harry straightened up, listening hard with his eyes screwed up with fear, and almost immediately, "Peeves!" It was the unmistakable hunting cry of Filch, the caretaker. Harry could hear his shuffling footsteps coming nearer, his wheezy voice raised in fury. "What's this racket, Peeves? Wake up the whole castle, will you? I'll have you, Peeves, I'll have you." "What's this?" Filch's footsteps halted. There was a clink of metal on metal, and the wailing stopped. Filch had picked up the egg from near Peeves and closed it. Harry stood very still. At any moment now, Filch was going to pull aside the tapestry, expecting to see Peeves, but there would be none. If he came up the stairs, you'd spot the Marauder's map, an invisibility cloak or not. The map would show Harry Potter standing 6 steps further up. "Egg," said Filch quietly at the foot of the stairs. "My sweet." Mrs. Norris must be somewhere nearby. "This is a Triwizard Clue. This belongs to a school champion." Harry felt sick, his heart nearly beating out of his chest. "Peeves!" Filch roared gleefully. "You've been stealing!" He ripped back the tapestry below, and Harry saw his horrible pouchy face and bulging eyes staring up the dark and, to Filch, deserted staircase. "Hiding, are you?" he said softly. "I'm coming to get you, Peeves. You've stolen a Triwizard Clue, Peeves. Dumbledore will have you expelled from the castle, you filthy, pilfering poltergeist." Filch started to climb the steps, his dust-colored cat at his heels. Mrs. Norris's lamp-like eyes, so very much like her master's, were fixed on Harry. He had had occasion before to wonder whether the invisibility cloak worked on cats. Sick with apprehension, he watched Filch drawing near and near in his old flannel dressing gown. He tried desperately to pull his trapped leg free, but it merely sank a few more inches. Any second now, Filch was going to spot the map or just walk right over his head. "Filch, what's going on?" Filch stopped a few steps below Harry and turned. At the foot of the stairs stood the only person who could make Harry's situation worse: Snape. He was wearing a long gray nightshirt, and he looked livid. "It's Peeves, Professor," Filch whispered malevolently. "He threw the egg down the stairs." Snape climbed the stairs quickly and stopped beside Filch. Harry gritted his teeth and tried to still his breath, convinced his thumping heart would give him away. "Peeves," said Snape softly, staring at the egg in Filch's hand. "But Peeves couldn't get into my office." "The egg was in your office?" "Of course not," Snape snapped. "I heard banging and wailing." "Yeah, that was the egg," said Filch. "I was coming to investigate." "Peeves threw it," said Filch, quite impatient. "When I passed my office, I saw that the torches were lit and the cupboard door was ajar. Somebody has been searching it." "But Peeves couldn't search your—" "I know he couldn't, Filch," Snape snapped again. "I seal my office with a spell none but a wizard could break." Snape looked up the stairs, straight through Harry, and then down to the corridor below. "Come help me search for the intruder, Filch." "Yes, Professor, yes, but—" Filch looked yearningly up the stairs, right through Harry, and who could see that he was very reluctant to forgo the chance of cornering Peeves. "Go!" Harry willed him. "Go with Snape, go!" Mrs. Norris, from between Filch's legs, stared at him. Harry had the distinct impression she could smell him. Why had he filled the bath with so much perfumed foam? "The thing is, Professor," said Filch plaintively, "the headmaster will have to listen to me this time. Peeves has been stealing from a student. This might be my chance to get him thrown out of the castle." "Filch, I don't give a damn about that wretched poltergeist. It's my office that—" Snape stopped talking very abruptly. He and Filch both looked down at the foot of the stairs. Harry saw and heard Mad-Eye Moody limp into sight, Moody wearing his old traveling cloak over his nightshirt and leaning on his staff as usual. "Pajama party, is it?" he growled up the stairs. "Professor Snape and I heard noises, Professor," said Filch at once. "Peeves the poltergeist, throwing things around. And then Professor Snape discovered that someone had broken into his Shut up," Snape hissed. Moody took a step closer to the foot of the stairs. Harry saw Moody's magical eye travel over Snape, then unmistakably fixed on him. Harry's heart gave a horrible jolt. Moody could see through invisibility cloaks. He alone could see the full strangeness of the scene. Snape in his nightshirt, Filch clutching the egg, and he, Harry, trapped in the stairs but a few steps behind them. Moody's lopsided gash of a mouth opened in surprise. For a few seconds, he stared directly at Harry. Then Moody closed his mouth and turned his blue eyes upon Snape again. "Did I hear that correctly, Snape?" he said slowly. "Somebody break into your office?" "It is unimportant," said Snape coldly. "On the contrary," said Moody, "I think we need to search it." We'll leave there for tonight. Tomorrow we'll see if Harry can manage to get himself out of the steps before Snape, Moody, and Filch ascend to him.